Hello, today I want to show you how to make these fun fringe earrings. I've beaded them onto this brass teardrop shape and they come together really quickly, but they have a very big impact and it's a fun way to really play with color. I'm loving this purple and yellow combination myself. So let's take a look at the supplies. I'm using size 11 Delica Miyuki Delica beads, and I have these brass teardrop shaped cutouts. I bought mine from a company called Pearls & Co., which is in France. And here is a look at that package. I know not everyone can order their beads from France. I'm going to link below on Amazon some similar shapes. I can't guarantee they're exact same size, but I will put some links below. I have a size 12 beading needle and I'm using KO beading thread. You could also use a Miyuki beading thread or a nylon beading thread or like Nymo beading thread. And I also have a jump ring, an open jump ring, and a lever back ear wire. I just wanted to take a second to show you. I had originally made these using fireline beading thread. I thought I could get away with it because the fringe was so short, but take a look at this one on the right. Here, I'm just going to show you what I'm talking about. The fireline, I thought I could use it and it wasn't going to really matter, but look at the fringe on the right, how it just doesn't hold its shape. It's like, it doesn't bounce back. It's awful. I gave up and started a new one. And the one on the left you see is nice and flowy. So I just thought I'd show you that because people are always asking about the difference between threads. So what we're working with is this KO thread. Also, Miyuki beading thread is my other favorite. You want to stretch it out before you start. It does have a little stretch to it, so always stretch this type of thread before you start. And I have about 5 feet of it. Then, of course, I thread my needle. And I'm going to find the end and I'm going to tie a little double knot around this brass frame. So I'm going to leave myself a good like 3-inch tail there. And then just do left over right and under. And then you go right over left and under. Sorry, I didn't get the best sort of view of this, but right over left and under. Just a simple double knot there. And this will still slide a bit, but don't worry, as you bead onto the frame, it will tighten up and it won't really matter where that's moving. So I'm going to start by picking up 4 beads of my first color, which in my case is this yellow, and slide that on down to the frame like so. And then I'm going to take my needle and come from the back of the frame to the front. And then I'm going to go through those second 2 beads like that. And then I pull that through. And you'll have the 2 sets of beads sitting next to each other on the frame like that. And then we want to secure that. So I'm going to go back down through the first 2 beads. And now back up through the second 2 beads. Like that. And you have your beads sitting next to each other. And like I said, this is still going to be a bit loose, but sort of hold it in place while you're beading and you'll see that it will begin to get tighter and less movable. So I'm picking up another 2 beads. And again, I'm bringing my needle from the back of the frame to the front and then back through those 2 beads. For the rest of the way, we're just adding 2 beads at a time rather than 4. So pull that, give that a good tug. I like to hold it between my fingers and give it a tug and sort of ease everything into its place. Pick up another 2, and we're just going to continue to do the same technique. So let's take a look at it again. So needle from the back to the front, and then back through those 2 beads. And then I sort of hold them between my fingers while I pull and give it a good tug. If you sort of like tug to the left, tug to the right, it cinches it in, sort of like really pulls it in there. So you want to pull it in the opposite direction. Okay, so we've seen this a few times now. I'm going to keep going like this around the edge of my frame. If you have the same size frame, I am doing 13 of the first color, 13 of color yellow, and then I have 32 of the purple, and then I have 13 of the yellow. So just keep going around until you get that. So it's 13, 32, 13. And then when I get to the very end, I will show you how we start the fringe. Also, I want to say, no matter what size, sometimes I show a frame like this and people buy a frame and it's a different size and they get confused. I like to make these sorts of patterns like loose. So that's for my specific frame, the 13, 32, 13 is what I'm working with. But whatever frame you have, just sort of eyeball it. So you want approximately half of your frame to be that first color. And just figure out what's going to work for you. It's not an exact science, but if you count it out, you'll be able to figure out and come up with your own pattern for the size frame you have. Okay, so here I am on my very last 2 beads of that first row of brick stitch, and we're just going to add that on in the same way. You want to have a little space at the top of your frame in order for your ear hardware to hang. So you don't want to go right up to the top because you just want to have that sort of wiggle room for your jump ring to hang with your ear wire. Okay, so that is all finished there. And now we're going to go straight into adding fringe. So for my first row. So I'm starting with gold, and then I'm going to have 2 of the yellow beads. And by starting each row with the gold, it gives like a cool sort of line around the earring, which you'll see it sort of forms a pattern. So I'm skipping that 3rd bead, and then I'm going back through the first 2 beads and the first 2 beads on the frame. So I'm going back through 4 beads altogether. And you want to just make sure that's tight in there. Don't let this get all loose. And then we're going to come up through those second 2 beads in our first row. Like so. And then we're going to do the same thing. We pick up 1 gold, 2 of the yellow. There we go. If we could focus. Okay. So 1 gold, 2 yellow. And we're going to repeat that where we slide those down, skip the first bead or the 3rd bead, whichever way you're looking at it, and then go through the other 2. And then also down through the original 2. Like that. And you're just going to keep repeating this process. And I have coming up, you'll see I have a little slide that's going to show you the sort of ratio. And again, this is going to be for the size hoop I'm using. But basically, the formula I've come up with is I'm doing 5 at this length of fringe. So 5 with the 3 beads. And then I will do 5 with 4 beads, and then 5 with 5 beads, and so on. So keep doing that. Make sure your fringe is not too loose and not too tight. You just want to, between each one, sort of check it, see how it feels, and continue on that way. So here I'm on my 4th one there. And now I'm going to add the 5th, and then it's going to be time to change to 4 beads. So if we take a look here, so I do 5 at 3, 5 at 4 beads, 5 at 5 beads, 5 at 6, 5 at 7, and then you're going to do 8 at 8 beads, which is the sort of bottom part of the curve. And then you just repeat it backwards. So go back to the 5 at 7, 5 at 6, 5 at 4, and so on, so you get back to the top. That is my formula for creating these earrings with this exact size teardrop shape. If you have a different size teardrop shape, you could still do this. You just have to sort of alter the formula for yourself a little bit. It'll be a little bit of trial and error until you figure out what you're doing. But if you get that first row of brick stitch on, and then you can sort of count what fits onto your shape, and then do some calculations to figure out how you can add your fringe on. And then obviously you could do whatever you want. You don't have to do your fringe in this way at all. You could do it all the same. You could do it more extreme. I'd like to try one where the fringe is just a little bit fringier. I think that could be fun. And yeah, and you could do all different colors. You could add patterns in there. I'm just showing you the basic technique. And I do like this technique of having that little gold line around, though. I think that's quite fun. And I've made, if you look at the thumbnail of this video, I did make another pair that have turquoise and a sort of mustard color and a gold line. And I really like those as well. Okay, so here I have run out of thread, and you will run out of thread with this product because it's just a lot of fringe. And so you're going to need to replace it. You don't want a thread that's sort of 10 feet long or something. So in order to weave my thread in, I'm just going to go back and forth along that original row of brick stitch and create some tension so that my thread isn't going to come undone. I'm not going to make any knots in there because they would be really obvious in this beadwork and would be ugly. So you just sort of find two sets of beads next to each other, and you're going to go around them a few times. And then I sort of go to the next two beads and do the same sort of thing. And that will create tension. So this is not going to come undone. Now, if you're using the right size thread and the right size needle, this will not be a problem. I think so many times in the beginning of beading, the problems I had were with like having a needle that was too big. And so I couldn't weave back through my beadwork the way I needed to. Or alternatively, if your thread is too thick and then you can't get it back through. But you see, I'm able to pass through these beads several times. It's not a problem. And that's because I have the right thread and the right needle. I also, if you're looking for thread, I also have links in my Amazon store, which I'll link below, that has links to the right size beading thread. You don't have to buy from there, but at least you can see what I'm talking about and like really make sure you have the right thread. So I clip that there, and then I'm just going to start a new thread, and basically in the same reverse process. So weaving through a few beads to like really anchor that. So when I say weaving between two sets of beads, so like around these two sets of beads to create some tension, and that will anchor my new thread. And then I'm just going to continue to weave on like I was and continue that pattern of fringe. So this is sped up a little bit, but I just wanted to see that it is possible, and not to be afraid. I think also when you're first beading, it's a bit scary to start a new thread and end a thread. Used to be something I dreaded. And I still do dread it a little because the fun part is the beading, right? When you realize, I have to change my thread, it's really annoying. But it's just one of those necessary evils. You just have to do it. The important thing is don't wait so long that you don't have enough thread left to weave in. I have made that mistake before too, and that is not fun at all. Okay, so I'm almost done with adding this in. I just want you to see at the very end, what I do is, in order to get my thread in the right position, I'm going to go through that last piece of fringe I was working with. So go to the bottom of it, go through the end bead, and then come back up that fringe and through the two beads on the frame. And then you're able to just continue on as if you had never stopped, because you want your thread to be exiting those next two beads as if you had never stopped. There you go. So now you're just going to continue on, finish up your fringe, following along with our pattern, our formula. And here we are at the end. I have just one little bit of fringe to add here. I'm going to add those, and then I'm going to weave in the thread into my beadwork in the same way that we wove it in before. So here I am with that. And I'm just going to take that and actually adjust it. If I just see that it was a little uneven at the top, now's the time you could really just sort of push that. It's not very movable because it is tight around the frame now, but you can wiggle it a little bit. And then I'm just going to weave this in, get rid of that thread. And then when I'm done with that, I'm going to take that original tail and put that on a needle and weave that in as well. So we're doing that same thing, just creating that tension. I mean, I guess more, err on the side of more if you have enough thread, like do it a few times to make sure that it isn't going anywhere. But honestly, with the first 2 or 3 passes, you're creating a lot of tension. I mean, if you find you just try to pull the fringe out, you'll see it's really not going anywhere. So I'm finishing that up and we'll be done with that in a second. And then you will take that first little tail, weave that in as well. So I'm going to clip this, boom, and then we want to get rid of that other tail. So get my needle ready. And sometimes with the nylon thread, you might just have to clip the end to really thread the needle again. And so now I am going to add this jump ring. You could also use a different kind of ear wire. If you were to use sort of a French ear wire, you could probably put it right on there. But this is the way I'm choosing to do it. So I am adding in that jump ring. I've added it to my leatherback ear wire. And then I add all of that to the frame and close my jump ring. And this way it sort of gives it nice movement, I feel. And so that's the way I've chosen to do it. But obviously, please feel free to do it whatever way you want. And there we have our finished earrings. They're super cute. I had a pair similar to this that I wore in Madrid last week, and I got so many compliments. So I hope you've enjoyed this little project. And I hope you will have fun wearing them all summer and winter, whenever you want to wear them. Okay. All right. Bye. Please subscribe, and thanks for watching.